Item number 10, AR 15-068, petition to amend the zoning regulations, Founders Village Homeowners Association, Inc. This is also eligible for decision, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to move that we accept the proposed changes as submitted.
I'll second
Okay,
that.
you need an effective date, and is it consistent with the town plan?
Effective September 1, 2015, consistent with town plan of conservation development.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion that's seconded. Any discussion?
This is to go backward forward.
The 40,000 square.
Discussion.
So this, you guys want to accept it, to pass it to back to 40,000 square feet?
Right. For the time being, what I would also
For
say,
industrial, so if some, just say, I'll give you a name, Mark Richards, facility wants to expand, you know, 40,000, you get.
well, let's face it. We have had people come before us and ask us to change our regulations before, and we granted. In your case, we certainly did, and we have in others. I think that the question that I asked when we did this 70,000 square feet has never been answered. And I think I'd like to buy some time while we get it answered. That question was, how does the 40,000 square feet compare with other small towns that we're competing with? Is that a bad number? I also did some homework. It does look like there are a number of buildings in town that are non-conforming, most of them, and a very small amount over 40,000 square feet. But I think the question is, do we want to keep Clinton the small town character, or do we want it to turn into something that's more industrial? And some would argue that it was already turning into something industrial with Unilever and some other things that got a bit out of hand, and we're trying to not let that get out of hand. But I think the key thing is, and I think you're concerned, and I share your concern, does this put us at a competitive disadvantage with other towns? And I'd like to know that before and we can always relax it. We can always make it 50, 60, 70,000, that's easy. But it's very hard to bring it back. It's very hard to reduce.
Wording there, Kurt, what? Mr. Chairman even said at the last meeting, you're putting us at a disadvantage.
I don't know that we are.
I think one of the issues that we have here is that what you just said is not really what's happening here, Kirk. That's all great, if that's what this was about. And that's not what I listened to person after person get up and talk about why they wanted to do it. If you're looking for a moratorium about which direction we should go, I'm all for it. That's not what's driving this.
Well, the change that was made originally was made based on the fact that they wanted to put a facility on the town dump for recreation. But we were at 40,000 square feet. So that was made based on that assumption that there was going to be a skating rink on the town dump. Well, that didn't happen. So, I mean, we changed it for no reason whatsoever to start with. And my feeling at the time when we were doing that, I came forward with the same thing, and I know we have a new plan of conservation and development, which still has to go before public hearing. But in our present plan of conservation and development, maintenance of the small town character, quality of life was something that people wanted in that plan. And so, I mean, why would
I've
have
been
we
listening
changed it?
to the small town character.
You can't talk, Mr.
Mr.
Smith.
Chairman, I had the floor, I think.
Mr. Chairman.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No,
No, you don't.
Yes,
Don't.
I do.
You're not
Yes,
allowed.
I do. Yes, I do.
Please.
I have something important for the commission that needs to be considered before this.
The public hearing is
I'm
closed.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, however, what I need to speak of refers after the public hearing and affects this.
Okay, if the only thing you're here to present is a challenge to one of the members, if that's the case, we'll entertain it. But if it's something other than that, then we won't.
Thank you.
Is that what it is?
Yes,
Surprise, surprise.
I'm sorry, but just in the, you know, it's my own due diligence to mention, because otherwise I would also be, you know, guilty. But I received a phone call on Friday from Mr. Alberino, and he has a very interesting proposal to establish a business on a piece of industrial property, in this case, where the recycling center is being proposed for, to be able to sell basically construction materials, stone, gravel, sand, topsoil. And it sounds very interesting, and I'd like to see the plan. I'd like to know just how many trucks would be going in and out.
I'm gonna
Yes.
stop you right there. If your challenge is to his ability to render an unbiased decision, and you're challenging that, we're gonna take it up with Mr. Alberino and see, are you asking him to recuse himself?
Well, I just think that maybe he doesn't realize that he needs to recuse himself because he has a personal financial interest.
Right, that being the point,
Yes.
we're gonna stop right there
Yes.
and proceed to ask
Yes.
Mr. Alberino if he feels comfortable. I didn't know anything about it. Here it is. You're being challenged. Your ability to render an unbiased.
I could render an unbiased opinion. I asked Mr. Semino, I asked Eric, I talked to Eric about it, I talked to several people about it, that, that's why I called you. Sorry, I'm not. I called him. And I talked to Willie, that if the property becomes available, we have a rail line that runs from our pit down to here. So I was thinking about running aggregate and storing aggregate down there. I talked to Eric about a year ago about it. And you can ask Eric, how long is it? It was over a year ago. And the owner, and I told Eric that the owner, Steve, and I told everybody that I told you I would recuse myself from, or anything that has to do with the hearing.
Would a decision on this application to amend the regulations impact you one way or the other?
No.
That's the question.
Absolutely not, absolutely not. We use other places, the Stanley Boxes property.
Would it be preferable to you if this property stayed at the present 100,000 square foot or go down to 40,000
It's not about a
square
single
foot?
property, it's about a zone.
Hmm?
It's not about a
It's
single
about
property.
zoning, it's about industrial.
I understand,
Talking about
but if
industrial.
the outcome here is to return to the 40,000 square foot maximum for this site and others in town, would that benefit you or not?
I can just jump in. As described to me, when Mr. Alberto came in last week, this would simply be for stockpiles and material and wouldn't involve a building at all.
No buildings.
So it would be,
So size,
I don't care. No.
size is not
it's not a
of
factor.
any consequence.
There's no building. We don't need a building.
I can't, yes.
Okay, no, I'll, after you resolve that issue, I have an additional comment.
No, it has no building. That's why I don't care about the size of the building at all.
As you know, and as I've stated in the past, I have no legal ability to remove any one member from deliberating and making a decision. How they choose to proceed, whether to recuse or stay and render a decision, is up to the member. Mr. Alberino, I've asked you, and you said you can render an impartial decision, correct?
Yes, I have nothing to do with the building. I don't care about building.
Okay, that's that.
The only question I have is, I don't quite get why you were contacting Mr. Semino. I'm not quite sure what the point of it was. I mean, just, I'm completely, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't,
Will we
to me,
explain ourselves?
Mr. Semino has challenged him. and
Will we
we have to
explain
address
ourselves?
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. The question was, do you believe you would act in an unbiased manner? You have indicated that nothing that has been presented has caused you to second guess whether you've been able to advise that matter is now decided and off the table. If there's additional questions, they can be taken up at some other time outside the scope of this discussion. This discussion is limited to the regulation at hand. It has nothing to do with why people call each other or what they said during the conversation.
Okay, we clear? So you're not recusing yourself?
No.
Okay. Fine, can we now proceed? We have discussion, we had a little sidebar here.
I just want to finish, I had the floor when I.
Yes.
I grew up with my father in zoning, and he was head of ZBA in Mark Richards for 25 plus years. The words "our small town character" tend to be something that people use all the time. We have our small town character, but we also need to balance it with economic development, and that's what we're lacking all the time. This is my personal opinion. When a building that size, just to put in perspective, is not really that big. So if you think of 40,000 square foot building as a huge building, I don't know what the number is currently. It might be 70, it might be 35, but we're not talking about a Walmart. Just want to put that is not what we're looking at.
It's like a recycling plant.
No questions from the audience. It's not a public hearing. That happened and it got closed. So we can't proceed on that any further. Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to just say, the 40,000 was correct, it was before us, prior to our change, we all know that. I see that in industrial zones, there should be the limit, our number, what it is now. And the reason why is because I think it gives us, if anybody goes and builds something on a piece of property that's big enough, they could put two 40,000 foot buildings and they only need 60,000. So that's where I have the hardship on this change. Because a builder comes in, wherever the property is, in the proper industrial zone or business zones, they could fit something in there easily by putting two 40,000 or three 40,000. When really they only probably need 80,000. So that's where I want to go with that.
And also would affect the people that own there now, Unilever. You know, the map development, will that 40,000 affect him?
No, they have non-conforming.
That issue was raised at the public hearing, and I was asking specifically what happens given the zoning board of appeals variance granting, and that being on appeal now, we don't know what the final outcome will be, but it may or may not impact this specific property that a group of people or the Founders Village group was concerned about. So I'm not sure what we're doing exactly, but we have a motion, we have a second. Anybody else that wants to have a discussion? Christine?
So I've been on the commission, the only applications come forward with any larger size, it has been an ice skating rink. I haven't had the opportunity to look at any applications that have been larger, so I don't have to take an issue with the going back to the 40,000 for that reason. If there was an application that came forward and they wanted to amend the regulations for that reason because they had a great opportunity for the town, I'm sure we wouldn't have a problem with it. The town plan dictates in some of the areas we do want increased density, but we want it in the appropriate areas of town. We don't want it across the board. And I think it's appropriate to go back to the 40,000 for that reason.
That's the point. The point is that, you know, in certain areas, perhaps a larger building would be fine. But we have to look at, I think that one of the things that we haven't looked at enough is to see if things are going to be built and how they're going to impact people's lives in residences that are around. I mean, I think that that's important to look at, and I think we should need to look at it individually. You know, it's not in your backyard or your backyard or your backyard, but it's in
But
somebody
you
else's
do
backyard.
realize that if the appeal is unsuccessful, that property is going to develop the way it's going to develop, and what we do here has no bearing on it.
I think that the appeal.
That seems to be your concern, so I'm just pointing
Yes,
out
I
that.
know that the appeal, I can't address the appeal going through, that's their appeal, all right? I can only address the concept, because I go back to when we did it, when it was 40,000 square feet, and the only reason we changed it was because of the ice
But
rink.
this is where I think we're all a little short-sighted, because I think because people see it's 40,000 square feet or companies or something like that. And you're right, there's probably not 1,100 people knocking on our door. But if there was 5 people who said, well, 40,000, I need to do it. That's why I think it has limited the growth potential in the areas that this is talking about, in those areas. So I think that's why I would like to keep it as where it is, because I think you could see some growth potential.
In other words, not grant the amendment to the application for the amendment.
That's it.
Just to say it one more time, and I'll not beat this horse to death, but this is not forever. This is a 40,000 square foot, which is what we had before. I would like our town planner, or planning consultant, to do some research and say, this is way out of whack with towns our size, or it's exactly, or there are some places in town. But one of the problems that we've had is that we've allowed residential to grow in some areas that they're now up against, without buffers, that they're now up against some industrial. And how much that industrial is allowed to grow, I think, needs some control, whether it's there or there are other places. It's not just in this one location. So I think this is one of those things that, in essence, gives us a moratorium. It gives us time to, this was a very emotional appeal about an ice rink. And we made a decision based upon an ice rink. And it was a little bit of a sleight of hand almost to do something for an ice rink that never really was going to really happen. And so now we found ourselves with some regulations that were done in haste and now need to be rethought. And this would give us some time to do some research and to rethink it very carefully.
Just to be clear, the regulations that were for the ice rink in theory were simply applicable to one kind of use and one kind of zone. This proposal is a much broader proposal to restrict all buildings over 40,000 square feet in pretty much all commercial industrial zones. So you're looking at a much broader repeal than in fact what the discussion was largely centered on, which is the ice rink. So you're acting with a much broader repeal, and that may be the intention. But just make sure that you understand what you're doing here before you do it.
Well, as I think I pointed out during the public hearing, 25.11, as of October 1st, 2013, it was 40,000 square feet was the maximum in B1, B2, B3, B4, Marine, I1, I2, IP. And so, we're basically reinforcing what was kind of already on the books, but it gives us a chance. And I'm open to considering larger buildings. I just like a little bit of time. We can always relax it.
Kurt, so I'm totally with Mark, because when people are looking at towns to invest in, they're going to look right at our zoning regs. They're not going to say, well, maybe someday they'll let us have a bigger building. A perfect example of a larger building, you got to go there, is Stony Creek Brewery. It's a beautiful little place where they brew their own beer, you drink it there. It's right on the water. It's got to be maybe 120,000 square feet. Stony Creek Brewery in Little Branford, right down on the
That was an existing
dock.
factory before predating zoning.
No, it wasn't.
Anyway, the thing is,
But my point is, Kurt, why would anybody look at our town and look at our zoning? The fact that CVS is even here, I mean, they're doing it just because the carrot is so good. They're gonna spend the time to work through our zoning. I mean, if I'm a developer, I'm gonna say, no, we'll pass it by.
because the question that's not been answered is the 40,000 square feet of restriction that puts us in an uncompetitive situation. And that hasn't been answered.
Look, he just gave you one.
Yeah, I give you.
And how about the
Yeah, well,
legal?
I think the exception probably proves the rule here. I think what we need is to buy ourselves some time, take a little step back, do some research and find out if indeed the concern you're expressing is a real concern. And then if it is, we can always increase it. But I think the reason that we made the change that we did was for some very emotional reasons that didn't hold up. And now we need to go back and rethink this.
We would never have made
All
the
right,
change. We
listen,
would never have
we-
made
we-
the change.
We've heard from nearly everybody. Those that haven't spoken, do they wish to speak and discuss this issue further? Commissioners? No. John, you have some take on,
Yeah, in brief, and I apologize, I wasn't asked to specifically comment on this in advance of the public hearing. My thought is, first of all, I would like to sort of reinforce what Eric is saying, is that this is a broader brush change than was made initially, and strikes me for that reason as a bit unnecessarily reactionary. The pendulum is swinging a little bit too far in the other direction, in my sense, and without strong enough justification for either the current or the proposed plan of conservation and development. Really, both plans really only talk about appropriate, well-designed development in appropriate areas. Both plans talk about encouraging commercial and industrial development. There is no mention of an arbitrary square footage limit in either plan. So to say that these plans, this specific numerical change is supported by the reg, I find false. That you should find specific justification in the reg to make this change. The thing that everyone's pointing to, I think quite appropriately, is that we would like development in our town that is well thought through, that is appropriate, and that is suitable to the scale of the area in which the proposed development is going. That is a question, to me, of design. That is not a question of an arbitrary square footage limit. There's no reason that a 30,000 square foot building can't be ugly as hell. And there's no reason that a 50,000 square foot building can be beautiful and a tremendous asset to your community. That number has virtually nothing to do with the building. Certainly, a Walmart in the center of town, 100,000 square foot footprint may not be appropriate in the scale. And that's the purpose of design regulations, that is the purpose of a special exception procedure, and that is the purpose of the contextual analysis that would come with a special exception. And it is the burden of the applicant in those cases to demonstrate why their application would be appropriate. I would say specifically in industrial areas, the town should err on the side of being more flexible with its regulation. Which is why I would sort of object to the lack of nuance in the proposed regulation, which encompasses all marine, business, and industrial districts. I think that's, in some business districts, I think because we have multiple business districts, you're pointing out that scale is different in those districts. The town identified several planning and focus areas, specifically the Knob Road Industrial and the distribution focus area, encourage relatively large-scale commercial and industrial facilities. Again, no arbitrary square footage limits, but in each case, focus on design, context, making sure it fits in with the neighbors, does not disrupt anything unnecessarily, and it encourages the community character. None of those things are impossible with a larger square footage. This is not to say that I disagree with the concept of limiting square footage, but I disagree with the broad brush approach here, the lack of nuance between districts, and really the lack of attention to the design process, the design review process that is going to be supported by the plan of conservation and development. So to Kirk's point of taking a step back and thinking about this, I would say that actually speaks to not taking this action, because that you basically be making a change. Kirk advocates for a prudent, careful approach. I would say take that prudent, careful approach and not make a change at this point.
all right, anything further, because if not, I would like to vote on this motion. Okay, you've heard the motion. Mr. Carr's motion to return to the previous 40,000 square foot. We've had many reasons and explanations given by various members. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Raise your hands.
Favor is Kirk, Pam? That's it?
Yep, evidently. Opposed? To returning?
I can't believe this
exactly as it is.
Okay, and Eddie, Gary, Mark, Mike, Tim, and Christina.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the motion is defeated. Now we will need a motion to approve it. As, I'm sorry. It's defeated, that's it. Sorry. Next agenda item. 11 SE-105.
Got snookered again.
Item 24, new business. The only new business I would like to discuss is a contract renewal for a period of 6 months, and we're actually into it already 1 month, right?
Almost a month and a half.
Month and a half.
So it'll run from
Or
July 1
to December
December
31st. The proposal as submitted to me, and I don't know whether the copy was circulated among all the members,
I think I sent it to you and
is essentially...
to you in the Atlantis office and SEC William.
Okay. Is essentially as it was last year, except this one's for 6 months, not a year. The scope of the contract is the same, although there is going to be no plan of conservation and development work after, hopefully, the end of September.
No drafting,
Although
just implementation.
Just the implementation. I can tell you that from my perspective, I would like to see CME continue, at least for the 6-month period. Somebody else is going to have to worry about it after that. But I think let's be specific, John's help has been well received and also quite important as we navigated through the twists and turns of the plan of conservation and development. And we seem to be almost there. And that's remarkable after all the different opinions and suggestions and iterations and so on. So I would like to see John continue. I think he's a valuable, CME is a valuable planning service for us. I think we can do without it. So I would like somebody to move for me to be authorized to sign the contract for the additional period of time from July 1st to the end of December. So that I can be authorized to do that.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Pam.
And we do have the budget, it is budgeted.
Right, it is budget. Any discussion, any thoughts, comments, or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Abstain. Colin is in. Okay, so I can sign this contract for what it's worth.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, under new business, I would like to suggest that we make one of the first tasks to do this analysis of the 40,000 square feet. Look at what the number is and what other towns our size and along the shoreline have in the way of maximum restriction. I'd like to know if we're at a disadvantage or not. You seem to think we might be at 40,000 square feet. I'd like to know how big that disadvantage is.
I'd like to add to it, and also looking at the specific areas in town that we're talking about those uses.
Yes. That would be, I'd like to see.
What's the specific thing you're looking to look at?
We'd like to, I think we'd like to, first of all.
I get yours, Kurt. I'm sorry, I'm just wondering what yours would.
While we're looking at that
just to clarify, because if I understood the way that so what we did is you kept the regulation in place. The regulation that you kept in place today allows buildings up to what, 70,000 square feet? 100,000 in what zone? Industrial 2?
It depends on what they are, where they are. There was such a broad thing that they were trying to change.
No. What's in place right now?
What's
That's what I'm saying, it's just all over the place.
There are certain uses
Okay.
that are the special permit, special exception regulations, I'm sorry, that are allowed in certain zones.
Okay.
So it's not by zone specifically, it's by special exception use.
Okay.
So it's, the use is really what drives it. And certain uses are allowed
In more than one different.
in different zones, yes.
All
But I think what Christine's saying is, the town's only 4 miles by 4 miles anyway, so are we talking about 5 sites, 1 site, 12, I mean, how big a deal is this? My guess is that when we were to figure this out, there might be like, less than a dozen
Yeah, I'm
sites.
not sure it's about a site.
Well, I mean, but I think that's a false question because you're talking about, what you guys are probably thinking about is vacant buildable sites. But there could be any number of sites over 2 acres, over 2.5 acres, where you could put a very large building. You'd have to take out whatever's there right now.
And you can amass as well, you could.
You could assemble two or three parcels like CVS's.
Yeah, exactly. You know, what is CVS is in theory going to acquire pieces and put a building there,
Right.
so there's nothing to say you couldn't do that elsewhere in town.
With a larger building. So I don't know, I'm just saying this analysis is a little more extensive. Kirk's question I think is easy to answer.
Right. Where are the towns? Well, how would we compare to other towns? Other towns all have a big sky high, 100,000 square feet, I mean, wherever, then you might want to
They're
consider.
not putting it on Jefferson Circle, right, so we know that.
Well, that's a residential area, and it does fall, that, any residential is out the
I'm
door.
just saying,
But-
yes, they can buy some sites. We're talking about Route 1, talking about that. Let's narrow the scope, right?
It'd be a high-class problem.
Industrial sites, industrial zones, and maybe like your Route 1.
Marine, you've got the marine area as well, because they like residential.
It's not included in the village zone.
What if Cedar Island wanted to put up a big, like the yacht
Village
haven?
zone.
Not in the village,
No,
yes.
obviously, no.
Obviously, IDZ was not included in this proposal in any of them, so you know there's going to be a large building with IDZ.
All right.
I don't think you're clear on your task yet.
I'm clear on half, and I guess the question is
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about.
to basically imagine that, take a look at the universe of potential commercial, industrial, marine sites that currently could have a larger than 40,000 square feet building according to an application of the regulations. And what could happen if we get a large building on all of them, or any one of them, or?
More of 100,000.
Well, I think the other thing to look
It all
at,
depends on the regs
There's
too. Depends
specific
on-
uses in the regulations that allow up to 100,000 square feet.
Like a ice skating rink.
I skated, well, that was 70,000 square feet. Warehousing,
Right.
research laboratories, and they're only allowed in certain zones and things like that, so that's what you'd have to.
Excuse me, what I was talking about before, if you curtail it, like Cedar Island Marina, what if they wanted to build an indoor, 100,000, over 100,000 square foot building? They got one in Westwood,
But,
you know, for storage, of inside boats. Why
what do you want him to
stop
say?
it?
What do we want him to say? That yes, it'd be good.
what I think we want to know is, are our regulations putting up unnecessary barriers, or are they, I think your concern, I think, I don't know what the words about, is that a developer comes in and he looks at all the towns along the shoreline, and here are places he can do it, and here are places that he's got to come in and ask for a change.
Yeah, that's my concern, but more to John's point is, none of that seems to really matter, and that's why I brought up the brewery. It's a huge site, but it's well done and it looks good. So, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter if it's 100,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet, it's really about what is it?
Are we more concerned about the use
Well, I think we're also concerned about it being in somebody's.
That's what I,
Concerned about use and design, I mean, you have,
We're also concerned about it being in somebody's.
you have a
size is relevant.
you have a perfect test case with, I mean, Unilever is what, 350,000 square feet?
But it's true though, we should be more worried about use. And maybe, basically, you asked me why I called him. Because I wanted to be a good neighbor and said, would you object to, and I asked Alan, I'll be on my call.
Let's take this offline, okay?
Yeah, this is what you asked the question. So I wanted to be a good neighbor and said, not building a building, would you object, would you think Founders people would object to, bringing stuff in by rail? That's what I did.
Well, let's,
Yeah, do you think that was really a good idea when he has a proposal coming, he's representing a group coming before us?
It's been some meal.
It's been.
Exactly. Honest, but an honest
The
guy.
second
Yeah,
you
but
stood
don't
up,
you think you should
I
just
knew
wait
that there was
until
there's
after
something
the
interesting.
Yes.
Look,
That's all,
come on, let's
that's all I
get,
would say.
let's get going. It's almost 10
I
o'clock.
was looking for a building.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, let me, if it's all right with the commission, I'll start with Kirk's question about surrounding towns, what they look like in terms of their regulatory ceilings, building square footage. And then I'll confer with Christine just to kind of refine the scope of that question, if there's a reasonable way to get a straightforward answer.
Okay,
And we'll proceed from there.
I would start your research at Stony Creek.
okay, that's.
All start there.
May I have that very important motion?
Let's go.
I think Kirk can make it.
Make that motion.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
That's for you guys.
Second, all